1, 2, 1, 2. The meeting of the Revere Zoning Board of Appeals will now come to order. Roll call. Oh, sorry, if we could stand and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members. Mr. Lemonna?
Here.
Here. Mr. Lopes? Here. Mr. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Pelton? Here. And Chairman Tucker?
Here.
Here, a quorum is present. Prior to the reading of the first agenda item, there's just one announcement regarding the Revere Housing Production Plan. There's going to be a community open house on Wednesday, January 31st at the Rumney Marsh Academy, 140 American Legion Highway, Revere, from 6 to 8 p.m. Revere invites you to participate in an interactive community open house to help guide Revere's housing policies and initiatives as part of the 2023 Housing Production Plan. The community open house will be professionally facilitated by J.M. Goldson, the Department of Planning and Community Development, and the HPP Committee. The open house will include interactive exercises as well as information about Revere's housing needs and accomplishments. Interpretive services and refreshments will be provided. First item on tonight's agenda is application A2339, Joseph Champa, 42 Joey Road, requesting variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals to enable the appellant to construct a 5-story, 20-unit residential apartment building at 419 Lee Burbank Highway.
Just for this could be a lengthy meeting, so 5-minute presentation. Anyone else wish to speak regarding in favor or opposed? You'll have a 3-minute time to speak. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the ZBA. You may recall that this was actually a continuation. This was first heard in December of last year, and we kicked it over with the advice of the ward councilor so that we could have a community meeting on the matter and get further community input, and so we did. But good evening. My name is Attorney Jerry D'Ambrosio. I represent the petitioner before you tonight, Mr. Joseph Champa, who's here in the back. Mr. Champa is a Revere citizen living up on Joey Road. Along with Mr. Champa, we have 2 other individuals that would be here to answer questions and also provide testimony. But given the fact that we're on a bit of a timeline, they'll only answer questions. We've reduced their testimony, or at least our civil engineer's testimony into an affidavit. And I have it right here, and I'm going to hand it to the city clerk. Thank you. And she'll distribute that as well. And I'm going to incorporate that into our presentation. It really serves as a good attachment to our memorandum of law, which was submitted back on November 22nd, which lays out the grounds for this petition before you. But again, Joe Champa, the developer, is here. The current site is in the GB district of Revere, general business. So the apartment house use is allowed by right. That's before you. We're not asking for a use variance. It's your typical setback variances and parking variances, which are routinely before the ZBA. The property, you all may recall, was the site of the former Three Oaks restaurant. And I have a rendition here for you. It's currently a fairly dilapidated site with an older structure. It used to be a restaurant that was condemned. It hasn't been redeveloped, and it's been sitting there in this shape for years now. Behind it is a rock ledge formation that goes up about 20, 25 feet. And then on top of that hillside is a community of homes that empties out toward Shirley Ave and toward Campbell Ave on the back side. It's important to note that this project has no access whatsoever to the community behind it. This is a project that just enters and empties out on Lee Burbank Highway and has no access whatsoever to any of the community that's up on the hilltop on the back side. It's important to note that this particular lot is a stereotypical lot that easily qualifies for a variance. And again, for that, I cite to the engineer's affidavit, but more particularly, it's an irregular shaped lot. It's triangular shaped, which is very unusual. It's 11,450 square feet, and the three legs of the triangle aren't even regular. They're irregularly shaped. Here's another poster board for the members of the ZBA so that you can see. It is a triangular shaped lot with a rock cropping in the back. It's literally ledge back there that shoots up, I believe it's 20 feet or more. And there's quite a bit of rock underneath this parcel as well. The reason that's important is that apart from the irregular shaped lot, this lot has a severe elevation challenge. It's roughly 75 feet on the back, 55 feet on the front along Lee Burbank Highway. So there's a 20-foot slope on the lot, which again is very important for a zoning consideration. Again, the affidavit, attached to that affidavit is the elevation plan for it as well. Finally, I think the affidavit refers to the soil conditions for this lot. It's a very choppy topography. It's very rock-based. There's going to have to be quite a bit of topography work done to alleviate the lot so that something can be built there. Finally, there's a fourth point. It's come to our attention that there might be some contamination on the site, which, of course, the owner, developer, Mr. Champa, is going to remediate as a part of this project. The reason I bring up these points is that there's been some objection put forth and filed that somehow this lot would not qualify for ZBA relief because it doesn't meet the statutory requirements. I suggest to you, gentlemen of the ZBA, this is an exemplar lot. It is a poster child for what a lot should look like that gets ZBA relief. And that's the reason why I've kind of gone through the elevation and the irregular size and the soil issues pertaining to this lot. And I think you have proper evidence before you, not only in the petition, the affidavit, but also the architectural drawings that have been submitted for your consideration. If I could quickly talk about the building that's proposed. It's going to be 5 stories, 20 units. First floor is going to have 22 parking spots, and then floor 2, 3, 4, and 5 is going to have 5 units. They're all 1 bedrooms, okay? All 1 bedrooms. The parking is going to enter and exit off of Lee Burbank. It's important to note that as a result of that community meeting that we had back in December with Ira Novoselsky and some other folks in the neighborhood, we worked with them. We lowered the height of the building by 11 feet. So after meeting with them, getting some input, we lowered the height 11 feet. And because we lowered the height 11 feet, it causes absolutely no obstruction to any of the homes which are up higher behind it in the back. There was one particular abutter who had concern that it would somehow block her backyard, which is fenced off. But again, we lowered it 11 feet. It's actually at grade, a roughly grade to her backyard. And again, it's fenced off, so she's not seeing it, and it's at the grade of her backyard as a result of our new changes. In terms of the zoning relief that's been sought, it's really rear setback to 0. It's important to note that there's a paper street back there. Even though it's on an embankment, there's a paper street
Okay,
back
Counselor, you're going to be coming up here again, I'm very sure of.
Sure, then I'll just
Please do.
end with that the parking relief sought is the same kind of parking and setback reliefs that are sought in every other proposal that comes before the ZBA. We've had a community member meeting on this. Ward Councilor Ira Novoselsky is in support of this. The mayor of the city of Revere is in support of this. This is a project that checks all the boxes in terms of what appropriate zoning relief would be for. That being said, I don't want to go too far over, or Chairman will yell at me. Thank you.
Okay, are there any proponents, anyone in favor? The ward councillor, Ivan Novoselsky, could you please step up to the microphone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Ira Novoselsky, 53 D. Hone Street, Ward 2 Counselor. I've been working with Mr. Champa on this land for about 5 years now, and he tried to put commercial in there, and just nobody wanted to go up there with commercial facility. And then he came to me last year about doing a 5-story building. I told him I thought it was too high and that it would actually encroach on the neighbors up on Hopkins Street above him. And I asked him to reduce the size, which he did. And looking at the property above him at 25 Hopkins Street, they actually have a 6-foot fence on their backyard along the cliff. It's literally a cliff that's about 50 feet high. And it is all rock up there. So, you know, I felt comfortable with him lowering the building, you know, so it wouldn't obstruct the neighbors up there. I know it was mentioned at one of the last hearing, plus even at our community meeting, which we had 3 people at. We had the owners of the property adjacent to it and behind it coming off Augusta Street. Now, Augusta Street is one house on Augusta Street now, which again is 50 feet above the existing location for this particular building. And it literally is a cliff beyond to extend Augusta Street, which comes down over Hitchborn Street. So I feel comfortable with this. If somebody wanted to develop behind it, you know, it would be their choice, but there is an access point to that particular property off Hillside Avenue, which they own property on Hillside, which would allow them to access or exit any potential development that may go back there. So, you know, I feel comfortable with this. You know, I know people were asking for a smaller building. We can't make him do any particular thing. It's his choice to develop what he wants to do within right, and with a few adjustments on the variances. So I feel comfortable with it, and the property, it's on a highway, granted, and it was mentioned that it was a GB district, which is general business. And the general business was attempted, it didn't work out, and this is his second choice to try and come back and at least utilize the property. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents? Anyone else in favor? Any other proponents wish to speak? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
I don't mean to interrupt, but if Chairman wishes to hear from our live witnesses today, they are here. We've summarized their testimony. If you have questions.
They'll probably end up having questions and they'll be speaking anyways,
Thank
I
you.
would assume.
Thank you.
Okay. If anyone is in favor, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
It's Justine Quarantello, 81 Hutchinson Street, Revere, Mass. I'm here to support the project. I think it'd be really good for the community.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Nicole Dunn, 34 Hillside Ave in Chelsea. I'm here to support the project. Joe and I are actually neighbors on another property in East Boston. I got to know Joe really well when I bought the property because he is a very involved landlord. He came to me, you know, if I needed any help with anything on the property. We worked really well together. We've built a really good relationship. I'm from Chelsea, and I also do a lot of work in Revere, and I think the site would be, this project would be the best project for the site. I think it's a big eyesore, and I think that in order to, you know, help the community grow, I think this would be a really good asset. So just wanted to support.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Anyone opposed? Well, first you have to get to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Barris, and I'm a real estate broker. Also, I own a property close.
please.
Barris Burke, 35 Hitchborn. Okay. So my property is across the street from Joe's, and I know Joe long time too. He's a great developer. The fact of the matter, it's an eyesore, the existing property. For him to improve will be not just aesthetics, but also the socioeconomics and economics of Revere will be a phenomenal project. So I'm in favor of the project.
Okay, sir. Proponent means you're in favor, and I asked if there was any proponents, and you didn't get up. So I have to open that side of the hearing. You're a proponent. You're in favor?
Correct.
Okay, so we will put that on record.
Correct.
Is there anyone else as a proponent in favor of the project that wishes the project? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Hi,
evening.
my name is Angela Walsh at 192 Lincoln Street. Mr. Champa is actually my landlord. I have known him for about 6 years now. He's a very conscientious landlord. I've also, seen him build homes from the ground up and also rehabbed homes. He's always taken very good care with the cities. I've actually helped him with some applications. And I really believe that he's going to do well on this project. I think it's going to not be an eyesore any longer, just as Barris had stated. And I think it's a great idea to have him go up on the hill there.
Okay, very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents in favor? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Anyone opposed to the project? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Craig Rourke. I represent Michelle Mongello and her family. They are abutters to the property, and we have submitted a written objection. I brought hard copies for the board, if it pleases the chairman. Thank you, board members, as well, for giving me the opportunity.
So you'll be discussing this, because a written would have to have been put in 7 days ago, but you're going to be discussing this?
Yes, and I was only
Okay.
retained late last week.
Okay.
So I'm new to the matter.
But you
and
are going to be discussing this, so the written
Yes, I
testimony-
will
okay.
discuss it briefly within the time limit, and I thank
Alrighty.
you for your time. In short, we object to the project because the developer has failed to meet his burden pursuant to the statute. To start, no person has a legal right to a variance, and they are to be granted sparingly. In this case, there is no evidence before the board that the soil, the shape, or the topography of the land has created a substantial hardship that this particular parcel could not be used within the existing rules. One point to address, I suppose, is the parking to begin, the parking variance. For this type of project, the number of spaces is going to cause a detrimental harm to the public good. There is access to the adjoining residential neighborhood just around the corner on a side street where it's already overburdened for on-street parking, and that's where the overflow ultimately will go. Moreover, this lot has been used, as noted, in the past for commercial purposes, including a restaurant, and very well could be again. Mere economic advantage is not sufficient to overcome the statutory burden, and all three elements of the statute must be met. And in this case, they are not. It is a conjunctive, not a disjunctive standard that we're looking at. That means that all of them need to be met, not just some of them. And other considerations here, unrelated to the underlying real estate, are irrelevant to the question of substantial hardship. Substantial hardship has not been established. The particular shape of the lot, the triangular shape of the lot, is not unique. The lot next door that's used as a used car lot is also triangular. So right there, there's an existing commercial use of the property with a similarly shaped lot. There's nothing unique or distinctive about this lot, and there's no evidence before the board to satisfy Chapter 48, Section 10, any one of the elements. They have failed to establish that the soil, the shape, or the topography has created a substantial hardship in this matter, and there's no reason to believe that something else couldn't be built there within the existing rules. I thank you all, members, and Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Anyone else opposed? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Michelle Kelly, Counselor at Law, I'm Counselor at Large, 99 Derby Road. I really have a question, more so than whether I'm in favor or opposed. I understand that the building can be right in terms of its use. The building can be built in terms of its use, and we're not looking for any relief there. But I'm just confused as to why the variances are being requested if the building could not just be built within its proportions allowed by the zoning code as is without being granted relief for the variance. Just a question I have. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll take other opponents, and then the questions will be answered by the council or his staff that's present. If you wish, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Padron. I'm Direka Butler. My property is 25 Hopkins Street in Revere. I'm appalled today to hear people that doesn't, proponents that do not live in our area, just talking about how good the builder is.
Just so you know, you walked in a little late. You only have 3 minutes, so take them accordingly. We realize if they're not living in the area, and
Yeah.
we take that into consideration, but you should
Thank you so
take your
much.
time very
Thank you.
valuable.
I really appreciate
Okay.
that. I really appreciate it. We do live in the area, and I still oppose. I understand they want to build, and the Monticellos and many of us in the area, we don't oppose to the fact that they build. They have their right. But also, I think we have rights also, and why they don't build something that is more appropriate for the size and for the shape of that lot. And without, respecting the neighbors and respecting also the quality of life of all of us. Maybe you don't see many people here today, and I understand it's hard for us, Monticellos, myself, very little people to take the burden, especially when we try to attend and try to participate and try to see if with the developers we can get to an agreement to do something that please everybody and everybody's happy, their side and our side. But I understand that sometimes people don't feel like it because, for example, in the community meeting, we were called, we were bullied, we were called that we talk nonsense when we made our petitions, and we also were told and threatened that there was no judge and nobody here in this Massachusetts area that will deny something to them. So people feel sometimes, as I feel right now, that what is the point? Sometimes when we come to this zoning, bringing our beliefs, bringing our concerns, try to participate and to get to agreements, and we don't see them. We see that the last times I've been here, that always the neighbors at the end, sometimes we are not even heard. But thank you.
Okay. Are there any other opponents? Anyone else? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, a member of the board. My name is Samuel Severino. I've been living in Massachusetts, exactly Revere, for 12 years. My name is Samuel.
Your
Severino.
street address, please.
I live in 25 Hopkins Street, right behind the
Thank
lab.
you.
I've been living in Massachusetts for 12 years. I moved from New York City in Revere. Some of you may be living here your whole life. I've seen a lot of changes in Revere. Development are good for a community. Some are good, some are bad. I think Revere Beach, how it changed so much in 12 years. I don't understand how, I don't oppose the building, but I don't understand how a building will be built on a highway, how people will have access, sidewalk, to walk into the community. I've been living in the house for 3 months, and what I like about it is the quietness of the street. You don't even hear the highway from the house, and I live right behind the highway. The development will interfere with my privacy if it goes that high. So because of that, I oppose to the build of the building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other opponents? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Council, if you have any members that wish to answer the questions that were asked, I'd be more than happy to let you speak at this time.
Thank you. So in terms of the questions about some of the rear abutters, it's important to note that this project is on Lee Burbank Highway. The community that they live in is 50 feet above and to the rear. There is no access from this building to those streets. And maybe Councilor Novoselsky would know better than me, but I think you have to drive past it quite a bit and then somehow take a right, whether it's down Shirley Ave and then loop down to Hitchborn Street and then loop around and climb back up the hill to be behind it. So I understand the concern while the project's being built, but there is going to be really no connection between this apartment building and that neighborhood on top of the hill behind it. There is no access unless someone wants to go rock climbing and go, scaling the 50-foot rock behind there to get from top to bottom. So, and I don't say that with disrespect, but that's just the topography of the site. So, and that brings me to the, the second question, which is Councilor Kelly's very good question, I may add, her very good question. And I'll answer that in the same way that I would like to address Councilor's points. It's important to note that Councilor represents the Mangiello family. She lives in Concord, Concord, Massachusetts. They've been purchasing lots in the back there and have amassed, I believe, 13 lots. And I have a bit of a poster board here of where those lots are. They're not direct, while they're within 300 feet, they're not directly abutting our project. See, our project is down here, and their lots are down there. She's indicated to me that her intent is to develop those lots. When I've asked to kind of share that with us, maybe we can work collaboratively, I got no response. We've sent emails, we've sent her copies of our plans, we've attempted to talk to her. We've gotten absolutely no response from her in terms of what they're proposing or how they would propose it or how we could work it. That being said, the reason I started, the reason I talked about the standard of what an easement is really to rebut the point that the councilor brought up, because this is a textbook case of where zoning relief applies. It's an irregular shaped lot with rocky soil, with elevations that are 20 feet disparate from the front to the back. This is exactly the kind of lot that cases in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts uphold for variances. In terms of economic hardship, this is exactly the case. This is causing immense economic hardship. How do you know that? Look at the property and what it looks at now. It hasn't been developed because anyone that needs to go in there and wants to put up something that might have existed there 20 or 30 years ago simply can't do it because of the remediation that the lot needs. The zoning relief is needed if you're going to put a project that's going to function there. Those are the facts before you. Now, Councilor Kelly raises a really good point. She's saying, well, why can't we put something there that complies with the ordinance? Well, and that's the real issue that's not just the city of Revere faces, but the entire Commonwealth. The zoning ordinance in the city of Revere was drafted in the 1950s, right? And that's the case in Boston, that's the case in Everett, Malden, that's the case going up the North Shore. You have ordinances that are older and antiquated. And so the way that the courts and cities and towns, municipalities across the state are dealing with them is through the use of variances. If you go into the city of Boston, as well as the city of Revere, I may add, 95%, between 90 and 95% of projects today are secured through the use of variances. So this notion that there's, I think council made the representation that they're sparsely granted, and that's not how it should be done. Again, being a lawyer that practices in this area, and not only here in the city of Revere, but across many cities and towns in eastern Massachusetts, I'd suggest to this board that that is the norm. Once those standards are met, which they're easily met in this case, a zoning relief is appropriate. And so, you know, Councilor Kelly brings up a good point. It's because things have changed. Times have changed. The Revere of 1950 is not the Revere of 2023. The costs of 1950 are not the same costs of 2023. So the burdens that someone would have had back then to build something are very different than what the burdens of cost and development are today in 2023. And that's why the standard incorporates that economic hardship element. And that's why it's addressed by our expert in the form of that affidavit. And he's here if there's any questions on any of the testimony that he provided in that affidavit. I'd suggest that the honorable individuals on this ZBA, this is an easy one when it comes down to do we meet the standards and a review by the board, especially when the challenge comes from an out-of-town individual who simply wants to develop herself.
Okay, that, I cut it there.
Thank you.
Because an out-of-towner owns property there, just like a lot of other developers you represent. So that I take
No,
offense to,
but the question is
that's-
collaboration,
Yeah.
right? Working with
All right,
and
thank
trying to
you.
get something done, which didn't happen here.
I'll let the other attorney rebut, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, the law remains the same. Chapter 40A, Section 10 is the law in the Commonwealth. And it wasn't a mere representation that I made about variances being granted sparingly. That comes from the Massachusetts Appeals Court. That's Kirkwood versus Board of Appeals of Rockwood. And in that particular matter, they were quoting Damascus versus Board of Appeals of Boston. That's well-established law. It's black letter law. And the petitioner, the applicant, has failed to meet that standard. Any one of the prongs, never mind all three of them. And I state again, for the record, that all three are required to be met. Merely because it may not be economically the best use of the property, that doesn't mean that he's entitled to a variance simply because it's a greater economic advantage to him. And that's well-established case law. And I stand on the arguments made in our written objection, and I refer the board to the many cases cited therein. And I thank you again, Mr. Chairman, board members, for your time.
Thank you. Are there anyone else that wishes to speak? And it's rebutting for this, so you did have comments, so please
If I
speak
may,
it.
I want to clarify some of the concerns. Number one, this building will not get parking permits. Okay, good.
I'm
Just wanna
glad you're
make sure-
mentioning that now. So
Yes.
no permits for
No
visitors or
permits
residents?
overnight or daytime, no permits
That
to
would be a
park
restriction
on
from the
other
board.
streets, correct. Now, it was mentioned at at the meeting that they were concerned about cars parking up on Hopkins Street, which has open parking other than overnight parking. They asked for permits up there. Be glad to work with them up there if they want permit parking on Hopkins Street, Summit Street. We can work with them on that and, you know, potentially make that happen with the Traffic Commission. So, you know, just to give them a little ease and concerns about restricting any outside parking up there. Thank you.
Okay. If you're coming up just to dissertate on something that was already commented, not new. If you're coming up for something new, I'm not going to allow you to speak. So I will allow you to speak if you're opposing or coming in front of something that they spoke about. You already spoke. If they said something that was untrue that you made a statement on, you're up here to speak.
No, I'm gonna talk about the parking. Nobody has talked about the parking.
If you were sitting there just right now, the parking was just mentioned that there will be no parking stickers issued for residential or for visitors. so they cannot get parking permits. That's something that the board would restrict.
That is excellent, but we have the problem still with people that has no stickers that park in our street, even though we have overnight parking. So.
Then
even
that's an
that-
enforcement issue with the parking department, not with the Board of
And when we
Appeals.
call, they don't come. So
But that's
that
something
is
that
why
you
I'm
have to take up
bringing-
with your counselor or with the city, but that's not the Board of Appeals.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but we can't enforce parking. Anyone else? My comment was that from last time we met here, there was an agreement made that the height of the elevation was lowered. And that was based on concerns of people up on the hill saying that it's going to affect their view. Looking at these plans, it can affect their view, even if the fence was taken down, from what I can see. So that concern, I believe, was addressed by the ward councilor. As far as the parking issue, the board will make a restriction if this is approved, that there'll be no parking permits issued, city parking permits issued for the building or its visitors. And I believe the council and the owner agreed to that of the property. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'd ask if any of the councilors have questions. Nope,
I have a question for Councilor Jerry.
okay.
Can you go over the hardship for this location, please?
Just to cut it right, financial hardship is not something that is in front of the Board of Appeals. Am I correct, Ashley?
It's,
Okay.
so they all work in tandem. The question is that when requesting a zoning variance, are there particular irregularities with the lot that increase the cost, that make it a greater hardship if you don't grant the relief? And here the answer is yes. And the reason for that is it's a triangular-shaped lot with the facade along Lee Burbank is even, I believe that the term is convex-shaped. So that requires a different shaped building. If you look at the plans that were submitted to you of this building, it's not your standard box. It had to be redesigned. It's an irregular shaped building to fit the lot at greater expense. The fact that the building has rock and ledge in the back, it created two things. It created a disparate elevation that had to be addressed or will be addressed with different foundation, more expensive foundation on the back side than the front side, because it's a 20-foot difference from the rear to the front. So that's a very significant cost in terms of the foundation work that has to be done to be able to fit that footprint. And finally, the soil, right? The soil is a rockier soil. It's going to have to be, in all likelihood, taken out. More soil is going to have to be brought in. It's going to have to be regraded. All these things add to the economic hardship. They add to the economic cost of a project, which make them viable or not viable. That's why here, the question is, why can't a simple restaurant go back there? Because the economic difficulties of doing all this work for a restaurant make it impossible. Maybe in 1950 and 1960 they didn't, because we didn't have as many regulations as well. But in 2024, they surely do. So it's that kind of economic hardship that makes the project more expensive, or more importantly, makes other projects prohibitive, right, is what, at the end of the day, justifies the variance relief. It would be very difficult. Like, I think counsel misstated something. He said that the parcel right next door was also triangular in shape. That's not true.
That is known just by looking at a plan, so
Sure,
we realize that.
If you look at the parcel right next door, it's a rectangle.
But we realize that, so
but
that's something you don't,
I get it, but the reason that's important is that a simple rectangle that's flat would have more difficulty sustaining a variance appeal. But this case, with an irregular shaped lot, with a difference in topography from top to bottom, the rocky soil, and then you have the X factor, which is the contamination that could possibly exist there that's going to be remediated. That's the economic hardship and how it's more expensive for this project and why it needs to be built out. And it's also it would be prohibitive for any other project that could be built there. Those are the factors that case law in Massachusetts, all the case law talks about. Those are the factors, and they all exist in this particular application. Again, if it was a simple flat rectangle, right, plenty large and with nice soil, it'd be a lot more difficult. It'd be a reach. This is just the opposite.
Question that I had that was brought up by someone through a phone call was the rear property, and I believe the owner's sitting here, is access to the property. There's, from what I could see and looking even with the engineering department, there would be no access from your property to her property. Please step in.
I think that's correct, unless someone throws themselves off the cliff.
No, but I'm saying there'd be no driveways or
No.
roadways. There's no access
No.
to that property.
No.
So I did check into that because I wanted to make it clear. Someone said, you're prohibiting access.
No.
There's no access to prohibit. There's no way for access to be from your property to the rear properties. Am I correct for that, counsel? You can get up and say if you think that I'm wrong. That was brought up that access to her property would, they're prohibiting her to have access to her property from that property, but yet there's no access. No matter who owns it, there'd be no access from.
Oh, you're talking about, so I think there's a paper street back there that's 40 feet, and we're not encroaching on that. It's still 40 feet. So we're not encroaching on the paper street that's back there. I think that's what the reference, perhaps that's what the reference is. Yeah, so that's there. That isn't encroached on.
If you can step up to the microphone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a matter of preservation of access, to answer your question succinctly.
But the engineering department says that he's not prohibiting access based on what the plans are now. So are you stating that they are?
I'm saying that it's a matter of preservation of access.
Well, that is being preserved then, because they're not taking away the access.
Oh, we don't agree with that. And it's a matter of again, first of all, I refer you back to the case law, that in this particular matter, whether the board decides to grant a variance or not, the matter that you're discussing is by and large irrelevant. It may speak to the third prong and the third prong only, but all three prongs need to be met, and the petitioner has not met that burden at this point in time. So whether or not the developer's a nice guy or he's a good landlord, completely irrelevant.
Okay, all I'm saying is that was brought to my attention, and I did look into that, and they are not prohibiting access through the paper street. I'm answering a question that was someone called my home. I don't know if it was her, but I'm answering the question publicly that I did look at that, and that's not being prohibited.
Certainly, and
Okay.
we didn't raise that in our written
All right,
objection.
I don't know who raised it. They said that they own the property right directly behind this. I assumed it was her. I apologize if it wasn't, but I'm answering the question.
Of course, and
Okay.
thank you for
Alrighty.
looking
Thank
into
you.
it. Appreciate your attention.
Anyone else wish to speak? Then I would ask for a roll call. Is there a motion to approve? Seconded? Is there a roll call, please? Roll call.
Chairman, will you be adding the standard conditions, including the parking?
Yes.
Okay. Conditions are as follows, if approved. If the rights authorized by this variance are not exercised within 1 year of the date of the grant of this variance, the rights shall lapse. This variance shall not be valid until the appellant has recorded this variance and plan in the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds and submits document recording numbers and dates to the city clerk and building inspector of the city of Revere. The appellant must receive site plan review approval prior to applying for a building permit, and the property shall not be eligible for participation in the city of Revere's residential and visitor on-street permit parking program. Shall the zoning board of appeals grant the relief requested subject to those conditions? Mr. Lemonna? Yes. Yes, Mr. Lopes? Yes. Yes, Mr. O'Brien? Yes. Yes, Mr. Pelton? Yes, and Chairman Tucker?
Yes.
Yes, the variance has been granted.
Next calendar item number.
Next agenda item is application A2401, Basilio Di Flumeri, 60 Conan Street, requesting the following variances to enable the appellant to convert an existing single-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling at 22 Sullivan Street. The applicant is requesting relief from parking within the front yard. At least 40% of the front yard shall be landscaped, and relief from the requirement that no driveway shall be greater than 20 feet.
Is anybody here to represent? Okay, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
Basilio de Flumery, 60 Conant Street. So yeah, I've owned the property for about 10 years. I've had the same tenants for 10 years. They just moved out, purchased their own property, so we're looking to improve the property, hoping to turn it into a two-family. We already have two means of egress. Downstairs, we would be adding another.
Just one moment. Okay, could you take the conversation outside? The acoustics in this room is terrible, and it does interrupt the meeting. Thank you so much. And please close the door as you exit. Thank you. Continue. I'm sorry.
No worries. So yes, we have two means of egress already, two full doors. I've spoken with my brother-in-law, who is a member of the Revere Fighter. We're actually going to add a third means of egress in one of the bedrooms in the basement, so that way there's both bedrooms have a means of egress, and the common area will have a means of egress. We meet everything for ceiling height, square footage, and everything like that. It's really just the parking. We have two tandem currently, which would be for that top floor, and then the one additional spot that we're asking for would be on the right-hand side of the house, which would be for that downstairs apartment. So, yeah.
Okay. Seeing that it's a public hearing, I'll ask if there's any other proponents. Anyone in favor? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Are there any opponents? Anyone opposed? Kindly step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Robert Bartol, 70 Taft Street. I'm here on behalf of my mother, Marie Bartol, who resides at 30 Sullivan Street, which would be an abutter to the property. Not so, as far as being against it, yes, privacy, I would think, would be an issue. Right now, the structure that's on that property sits 4 feet 9 inches from my mother's property line. I can basically touch the house. It was brought to my attention just now that the driveway is going to be on the right-hand side of the property. I'm not sure how that's going to work. The driveway currently is on the left-hand side of the property. My real concern is for my mother, Marie. She's here. She's in her 90s. She lives at 30 Sullivan Street since the 1950s. Her property does not have a driveway. She does not have a garage. There are no curbs on that street, so parking is going to become an issue. Right now, nobody parks in her spot. They realize it. It's an older neighborhood. That's her spot. When people move in, it's going to become a two-family. That's going to go away. Is there any way possible that she has a handicap plate? She has difficulty walking. If she comes home with groceries, she's not able to park down the street and to get into the property. Another thing that I'd just like to make mention of, there are no hydrants on that street. So as we keep building two families, bigger properties, God forbid there's an issue, the closest hydrant that I'm aware of is on Ensign Street. So these are just something that I want to bring to the table and address tonight.
Thank you very much.
You're
Is there any other opponents? If someone else is there, they can step to the microphone.
She submitted a letter in writing. I don't know if she's needed to read that.
Did she submit a letter?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, the clerk will read it.
Okay.
This letter is regarding the conversion of 22 Sullivan Street from a single-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling. I'm a direct abutter living at 30 Sullivan Street. My father had this home built in 1947. It was the first home on Sullivan Street. I'm currently 92 years old and have seen a lot of changes on this street. As more homes are converted into multiple dwellings and people come and go, the parking situation on the street becomes increasingly worse. It is a short street, and we do not need any more cars coming and going. I strongly oppose granting these variances, allowing the conversion of 22 Sullivan Street from a single-family home to a multiple-family dwelling.
Thank you. That'll be put on record. Anyone have questions? I do have a couple of questions, but Councilor, you can go
Yeah, I
ahead.
have a question. I drove by there today, and the houses are so compact there. Where do you plan on putting parking in front of the building? Because on the sides, it's impossible to put them on the side.
Yeah, so on the right-hand side, there is a small walkway of about 5 feet, so it would be 9 feet wide, 9-foot wide parking spot, so 4 feet would be in front of the house
In
there.
front of the house.
Yeah, and so to add to it, the reason I'm doing that is to alleviate parking on the street, instead of going for a variance of only the 2 spots and hope then another, whatever would be street parking. I was hoping to add a parking spot there in front of the house, get the variance for that, to alleviate some of that, because then there is still parking in front of that house for 1 car. So you have the 2 tandem, the 1, and then enough space for somebody to park directly in front of the house.
Okay, I do have a question, because looking at the plan, what's the distance from the front of the house to the sidewalk, per se? Even though there's no sidewalks, there's still a property line and a sidewalk. I don't think that, it does say 20.7?
Yep.
But you have a set of stairs there, so how much do the stairs come out?
There are no stairs, it's a full walkway. It's the front door is level with the front of the house.
So to the left in the plan here, that's not any stairs or anything, that's on flat level? If I look at the left of the plan?
So
Oh, no.
if we're looking, Sullivan Street is.
It's marked, that's why I don't know if it was anything, I can't really tell.
No, so there are 2 small planters in the front, there is the walkway, and then it's just sort of a landing there and the door is set back into the house overhang. So that door is slightly set back, but there are no stairs from the street to the front door, it's a straight walk.
So you would be asking for a front yard parking variance as well, that's not listed, right? Am I right? It is, that's the first thing that for the, okay, it is front yard, so you're asking for it in the
Yep.
plan? Okay. Any other questions?
10 years. Yep.
A question was raised about parking in front of another home. Is there a handicap parking sign there? There is not. Okay, then you can always request that through the handicap affairs if she has a handicap placard. I was not aware of that. Yeah, so that's something that you can request, I believe. You can contact them and see if you can request it. I see it all the time on TV, it's going through the traffic commission, so it may be worth a call. Does anyone, what's the motion on the floor is there a motion on the floor to approve? Seconded? I ask for a roll call, please. Standard conditions.
If the rights of this variance are not exercised within 1 year of the date of the grant of this variance, the rights shall lapse. This variance shall not be valid until the appellant has recorded this variance and plan in the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds and submits document recording numbers and dates to the city clerk and building inspector of the city of Revere. The appellant must receive site plan review approval prior to applying for a building permit. Shall the zoning board of appeals grant the relief requested subject to those conditions? Mr. Lemonna? Yes. Yes, Mr. Lopes? No. No. Mr. O'Brien? No, Mr. Pelton? Yes. Yes, and Chairman Tucker?
Yes.
Yes, the variance fails, is denied.
Our next calendar item number is they are here.
Next application is A2402, Olympia Development Corporation, 1605 North Shore Road, requesting an additional 6-month extension of the 1-year exercise period from the Zoning Board of Appeals associated with the granted variances of application A2308 to enable the appellant to construct a new 5-story residential development on the property known and numbered as 791 Broadway.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Nancy O'Neill, and I am an attorney located at 14 Proctor Avenue. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Olympia Development Corporation, to request a 6-month extension of the variances granted on March 9th, 2023. In recent weeks, 2 underground storage tanks containing oil were discovered at an adjacent property. And these tanks, which were from around 50 years ago, were leaking into the ground. So we are seeking the extension to be allowed time to complete environmental testing and remediate contamination as necessary. But overall, this is one good thing arising out of economic development in this portion of Broadway, that these older lots are going to be cleaned up. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Seeing that it's a public hearing, are there any proponents? Anyone in favor? You have to get up and speak.
I
You
do,
have
just
to-
real quick, 'cause
God help
I
you.
want the ZBA to know, and I want people to know, that one of the wonderful things about that project that was approved on Broadway a year ago is that it required new testing to be done. And because of that new testing, they discovered that under the Vaza, or actually
Vertucci.
the Vertuccio Funeral Home, there were oil tanks that had been forgotten, let's just say decades ago. Unfortunately, those oil tanks had oil in them, and they were just buried over. Because of the economic development, they've been discovered, and now they're being remediated. So instead of this oil underground flowing through our aquifers and ending up under the neighbors' houses, it's going to get cleaned up. And sometimes these ancillary benefits, we don't talk enough about them at the time because we don't know when we're doing a project. We suspect that there might be contamination, but the approvals are granted, so we don't come back. This is one opportunity where at the end of it, I can come back and say, thank goodness for this project, because otherwise we would have had oil tanks, big oil tanks, very large ones with oil contaminating that area of Broadway, and it's being cleaned now as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Is there a motion to approve? Seconded, roll call, please.
Shall the zoning board of appeals grant the 6-month extension? Mr. Lemonna? Yes. Yes, Mr. Lopes? Yes, Mr. O'Brien? Yes, Mr. Pelton? Yes, and Chairman Tucker? Yes, the
Our
time
next
extension has
meeting
been
will
granted.
be March 20th or 27th? March 27th. There's no February meeting. We have 2 members that will be leaving February vacation. Thank you all and have a good night.